is Histories and Mysteries. I'm your host, Ashley. My dog is squeaking her toy in the background for you. And this is...
Jessica. Sorry. Oh my God.
Pinky, stop.
All right. So I'll just keep going. On this week's episode, Ashley's going to be talking about Waco. That's how you say it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I am going to be talking about the Black Dahlia.
Ooh.
Yeah. Super exciting episode this week.
Yeah. So my Waco one is a little bit long. I got it from an ABC documentary called Truth and Lies Waco. It was really good. And so obviously I have heard of Waco, but Netflix, I think last year, maybe this year, I don't know, 2020 seemed like 100 years, released a documentary called Waco, and it was pretty big. And I watched it and I hated it. And the reason I hated it is because they made David Koresh out to be just kind of like this zany religious preacher, and like, you know, what was done to him was so wrong, and like they really took kind of his side of it. And I know it was based on a book written by an undercover agent who really like kind of, I don't want to say liked David, but like kind of.
Yeah.
And while I don't think the government handled this correctly in any way, shape, or form, I also think that David Koresh was a monster. So I liked this documentary because they dove in a little bit more into the crimes he committed, whereas the Netflix like reenactment, by the way, the main character was played by a really hot guy, and I couldn't get over it because David Koresh is not hot. But anyway, they like I said, they've kind of portrayed him as just like this zany guy, when in real life he was like a pedophile and a rapist and just like an evil man. So all right, so I'm gonna jump right into it. After a 51-day standoff, 80 people lay dead, 25 of whom were children, all because one man claimed he was the new Jesus.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So David Koresh, the founder of the Branch Davidian, well, he wasn't the founder of Branch Davidian. So Branch Davidians was around, and then he kind of came in and took over and made it what it was, or what it became. And this is called Waco because it's right outside the city of Waco, Texas. He was a self-proclaimed Messiah or prophet, comparing himself to Jesus. He said that he was the Son of God. And we'll get into that a little bit more. He was actually born Vernon Howell to a 15-year-old mother. His mother was married 3 times, and a few were abusive. So, he had kind of an unstable home life. He wasn't the best student, and he actually had some learning disabilities. So he really struggled in school. But by the age of 14, he had memorized the Old Testament, like memorized the whole thing. Jeez. And by the age of 18, he had memorized the New Testament. He said that when he was a child, God had come to him and said, hey, you know what? You're the Messiah. So he joined the Branch Davidian Church. They were an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but really what made them different was that they had a doomsday prophecy. So they believed that they were all going to die at some point in the end of the world. Like the apocalypse was coming.
Okay.
Slowly he worked his way up and became the leader and then the self-proclaimed prophet. He told his followers they were supposed to separate themselves from the world because the world is sinful and you're supposed to be spiritual. So their compound was like way off in the distance by itself, so they didn't have to be part of society. They didn't have running water, heat, or electricity, and they called the compound Mount Carmel, or David called it the Ranch Apocalypse. They had several floors and several like buildings to this compound. Men lived on the bottom floor. Women and children lived on the second floor. They had a shelter buried with like a school bus. It was like it's kind of a weird setup. Like the school bus went into this shelter where they could go in an emergency, and they also had like a gym and a church.
Okay, cool. Interesting for sure.
Yeah, yeah. They had to go to Bible study 3 times a day. Women had to wear long shirts that would cover their butts, like as well as pants.
Yeah.
Um, they weren't allowed to wear makeup or jewelry. And actually, one of their members, her name was Margarita Vega. She was a socialite from Hong Kong, and she ended up coming over and joining this cult. He controlled,
Interesting.
yeah, he controlled every aspect of their lives. He told them where to sleep, who to sleep with, what jobs they would have. He had absolute authority. He said that they should not eat dairy because milk is baby food and they were adults. Um,
Okay.
yeah, he had like a lot of weird, like combination rules. So, like, they said you could have apples and bananas, but you couldn't have apples and oranges together.
Oh,
You couldn't eat fruit and veggies together, and you couldn't have any sugar or processed flour.
okay.
Yeah, and so one of the psychologists or psychiatrists that they interviewed said that he was making these weird rules to like test people and see if they would obey, which makes sense.
Yeah.
They also heavily, heavily, heavily believed in punishment, and he would even spank some of the adults as a punishment.
Oh.
They would also give him their children to discipline, and he would discipline them real bad.
Uh,
So they would start disciplining their children at 8 months old and would beat them really badly.
oh.
They said one mom on the interview said that they were preparing for war and had to make sure their children would obey them no matter what. If they said drop, their kids had to drop because it could mean their lives.
It reminds me of Jonestown.
Yeah. Yep. Um, they would paddle their children until they bled, but God wanted and needed that according to David. David had several wives. At one point, someone in the documentary was like, "Yeah, I was his 20th wife." I was, holy crap.
Yeah, no kidding.
He was a vulgar and would talk about sex explicitly around the children. And then he said Sunday was the Sabbath day, which follows most religions. But then he said the Sabbath day was for sex.
Oh, okay.
um, so he claimed, like I said, that he was the Son of God. And he said that so God sent a sinless man, Jesus, down, right? But because Jesus was sinless, he couldn't understand why people sinned or related to him. So he was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to send David, a man who sinned and could understand and relate to humans.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Little weirdo.
yeah. Basically, in this cult, he dissolved all marriages and said that, like, all the women were his wives if he wanted them. So he would, like, pick them out, even if they were married, didn't matter. He would pick them out and be like, okay, you're going to be my wife. And the rest of the men and women had to stay celibate.
Oh.
And so one of the ladies interviewed said that David said that God was telling him who was to be his wife and who wasn't, so they felt special. They're like, oh my gosh, God chose me to be his wife.
Okay.
Um, so at the beginning, he had 5 wives.
Oh.
And when I say wives, they were girls. One was 17, but like many were 14 or 15 or 16. He was grooming children to make them his wives, and that's why he would talk so much about sex around them and that kind of stuff. He said he was God, and he carried God's seed, and that you could have God's child, Jessica.
Oh, lovely. Hey, it's like your last week's story about you being the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, in my dream. One of the survivors, was a little girl at the time, and she recalled being groomed by David. He would take her on a motorcycle ride up to the mountains when she was like 12, and she felt special because no one else was getting a motorcycle ride from David. And then one time, her mom took her to a hotel room where David was waiting. He made her take off her clothes and get into bed.
The 12-year-old?
Yes.
Yuck.
Yeah. And she's grown up now, and she looks back on it, and this sentence broke me. It was really sad. She was like saying it through tears, and she said, "There came a point where I wasn't the most important thing in my mom's life. Not even her own salvation was. The most important thing was just for her to follow what David said."
Aw,
That's so sad.
that is sad.
Yeah. So basically, she was, raped and became one of his wives, I think. And her dad was not a member of the cult, and he was interviewed on there too. And he still, to this day, is like so upset about what happened to his daughter.
Yeah.
Um, so at this point, too, David had predicted that the government was going to come for them, and it was all going to end with them dying. And unfortunately, he wasn't wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But he wanted to militarize his followers. So he would go to gun shows and purchase huge amounts of guns and ammo. And he, like I said, he thought there would be a war between them and the Beast of Babylon. And the Beast of Babylon was the government to him.
Okay.
So I think kind of where this mentality came from was at this time. So there's an underground anarchist movement happening, and people were really distrustful of the government. And something called Ruby Ridge had just happened. There was this guy and his family who wanted to live off grid, and he stockpiled like a ton of guns and stuff like that. And the government came, and I can't remember 100% why they came, but they did, and they ended up having like a small standoff and killing his wife and child. And
Oh.
so this was like fresh off the boats of that, and all this anarchists and, not trusting the government. And so I think that's kind of how David's mentality was as well.
Yeah.
Um,
That shit
the,
crazy.
huh?
That shit crazy.
Yeah. They said there was always an armed guard at the post of Mount Carmel. They taught the kids how to commit suicide with a gun. So one of the girls was saying that they would teach them, like, you don't shoot your temple because you could miss and end up like a vegetable. You have to shoot in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
They taught them what kind of like helicopters and vehicles to look for, and if they saw them, to run inside and tell the adults that they were under attack. They had bulletproof vests that the women would sew, and the girl interviewed said there was a level of just impending doom.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. In David's theology, it was a responsibility of the elect or faithful to fight as hard as they could, to take up arms, and that would bring down the host of angels that would bring about the end of the world. So that's kind of the belief system there. He kept saying they're going to come for us. And again, like I said, unfortunately, he was right. So the police started looking into him because one day the UPS delivered a box of grenades to the compound, and the box broke open, and this guy saw all these grenades. So he told the police. And ATF was like, "Oh, that's weird. That's suspicious."
Yeah.
And ATF, I don't know, Jessica, do you know ATF?
I don't know in what context.
The police force ATF.
No.
Okay, so in America, we have the ATF, which stands for, what does it stand for?
You don't even know.
Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms and explosives. I knew it was alcohol and firearms. I couldn't remember what the T was.
Oh my
I
goodness.
actually dated a guy that was in ATF, so I should have remembered what the T was
Jessica, you
for.
know what this means? No, I don't. Do you? No.
I did too. I just didn't know what the T stood for. No, but it stands for alcohol, tobacco, and firearms and explosives. So, oh my gosh, if my ex listens to this, he's gonna be so disappointed in me. He worked
Oh
for
my goodness.
ATF, and so like a lot of what he did was undercover, but he had like the like an undercover cop car, but he still had like the lights in it, and he had his gun. He was, oh god, he was so sexy. Anyway,
Thank God your husband doesn't listen to us.
I know. Oh, well, he's married now, and I'm married with a baby and very much in love with my husband. But yeah, he was pretty sexy. Anyway, so ATF got involved, and They started looking into the illegal firearms manufacturing and child abuse that was going on there. So I don't know. I've read a couple different things about this, in that one, that they actually had no idea about the child abuse that was happening, and it was really just about the guns.
Yeah.
And kind of, again, like that anti-government stand, and them kind of wanting to show, if you're anti-government, what can happen to you, I guess. So definitely, like I said, the government did not handle this well. ATF did not handle this well, but David was also a monster. So the plan for the ATF agents were that 77 agents were to go up and secure the arms room in Koresh's bedroom, while someone else entered the first floor, and someone else entered another team entered the second floor, and the rest would form a perimeter. So that was how they were going to do this raid of this compound.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, they didn't really go into detail about like what made them decide to do a raid, because I feel like there was a lot of other options, but
Probably. But,
um,
you Americans, gun blazing, right?
guns a-blazing.
Guns a-blazing.
They also set up undercover agents across the street, but they weren't real good at being undercover. When they were moving in, they didn't move in any furniture. They just moved in equipment. So if anybody was watching them, and they also were 40-year-old men trying to be college students. So not a great plan. But Robert Rodriguez was an agent that was put there to kind of infiltrate Mount Carmel. And Robert Rodriguez was the one that ended up writing the book that the Waco documentary was made after.
Yeah.
So nobody knew in the cult that the government was coming to do the standoff. It was a surprise attack so that they could sneak in and surprise them, so they didn't have time to really arm themselves, right?
Yeah.
But this news crew was going down the road to catch the action. They got lost, and they asked a mailman for help.
Oh.
Well, the mailman was part of the cult.
Oh, perfect.
So he quickly ran back and told David that ATF was coming. So their element of surprise was gone.
Super.
At this point, David sat Robert Rodriguez down. And this is I'm surprised he didn't kill him, but he didn't. And he said, I know you're a plant, and I know they're coming for me, and you need to get out. So Robert went back and he said, hey guys, David knows you're coming, so maybe you don't have the element of surprise anymore. But the heads at the ATF was nah, man, we already got so much money in this, and people are on their way, it'll be fine. So they basically set their men up for failure. I mean, there's no other way around it. They knew they were coming. They were heavily armed people, and they were you know what? It's fine. Just go for it. So there was about 150 people waiting inside the compound for ATF before they got there.
Wow.
And once they got there, no one knows to this day who shot the first shot, but someone shot the first shot, which caused everybody to start shooting, right?
Hey, it's like Star Wars.
Yep.
Oh, my husband will be so proud of me that I understand that reference. Or that I even made that reference.
So you even made it, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So David hears the gunshots, obviously, and he comes running down. He says, hey, I'm going to go talk to them so they don't do anything stupid. He opens the door and yells, there's women and children in here. And, they obviously yelled, police, we have a search warrant. So David just backed up and shut the door.
Yeah.
Police continued to fire through the building, and David at this point was shot. Not lethally at this point. So after David being shot, his people got real pissed and started shooting even more.
Fun.
Yeah. The first fight was a 45-minute shootout.
Cool.
Yeah. There were casualties on both sides. And at one point, they were interviewing a news guy who was there at the time, and they yelled to him. The ATF yelled to him, and they were like, call help, call for an ambulance, because apparently they didn't have ambulances there.
Oh.
I guess they didn't think that showing up with a bunch of armed agents to a bunch of armed people was going to end badly.
No, you don't say.
I know. They said this one guy, this one ATF agent was shot a few times, and like by the end of this first standoff, when they were able to kind of like grab their dead and wounded and bring them back, they didn't have enough ambulances, so they put him on like the hood of one of their like cars and like drove him down the road like injured and stuff. It's crazy. It was crazy. It was a free-for-all.
Jeez.
So Wayne Martin, a cult follower, called 911 from inside the building, hoping that he could speak to the people on the ground. Dispatch patched him through to the local sheriff, Lieutenant Larry Lynch. And Larry made a point in the documentary to say that all he had at this point was one 8-hour course in hostage negotiation a few weeks prior.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, and here he was trying to negotiate between, you know, the cult and ATF.
Yeah.
Larry said to Wayne, you know, tell your people to cease fire, and then ATF will cease fire.
That's not how it works, buddy.
And Wayne said, I have a right to defend myself.
Yeah.
And then hung up. So Larry called back, and this time he got a hold of David, who was just like super chill. Like, could not give two fucks of what was going on. Just super chill. And Larry was trying to talk to him about like ceasing fire. I mean, there's like a 45-minute shootout going on. And all David could do was start talking about like the 7 seals and like his theology. And Larry tried to interrupt him to talk about getting the firing to stop, but he just kept going back to theology. Like he could have given 2 shits less about any lives. At this point, David, like I said, had been shot, and he thought he was going to die. Yeah, right. He thought he was like dying, and so did, you know, everybody else in his cult. And he ended up calling his mom and left her a message. And this just kind of shows like the mentality of him, so that's why I put it in. But he said he was shot and dying, but that he'd be back. And quote, I'm sorry you didn't learn the seals, but I'll be merciful, okay? Tell Grandma I tried, and I'll see you all in the skies. Bye. So he thinks that he's going to come back and be like the judge, right? He's going to be merciful. He's going to be the judge.
Yeah.
So after a while, they did have a ceasefire, but only because ATF ran out of ammunition.
Oh. I mean, it works in their favor, right?
Yeah.
I don't like either side.
Yeah, both sides really suck.
Yeah. Like there's nothing good about any of these sides.
No, it was awful. And unfortunately, like the ATF agents that were put in harm's way, like didn't have a choice in the matter. Yeah. It was really like the higher ups of the agency that really like screwed them over and put their people in harm's way.
Lovely.
So a cult member from inside said that someone was running up and down the halls yelling ceasefire. They're trying to negotiate. So then they stopped firing as well. And like I said, the ATF agents were able to get up and move back and like move their wounded and dead. At this point, they had 4 dead, ATF dead. One was only 26 years old.
Aww.
And 28 agents injured. So, yeah. That sucks real bad. So, at this point, the FBI came in and was like, yo, we're going to take over. And the FBI agent that came in was quoted in this documentary as saying that the ATF leadership put their men in an impossible situation and gave them a mission they couldn't succeed at. This became America's longest running siege and lasted for 51 days.
Jeez.
So obviously during this ongoing 51 days, it was a huge media storm, right? Media was like eating this story up. And David loved the attention.
Of course he did.
Yeah. He almost immediately after this like standoff, this 45-minute standoff happened, CNN was able to get through to David and he was talking on interviews. Like almost immediately he was interviewing on the radio and the TV and stuff like that. Apparently there was even a film director that faxed a film rights contract to David.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Ugh. I hate that these like stupid execs want to glorify these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And that's kind of what I felt like the Netflix documentary Waco did. I kind of feel like it glorified David.
yeah, ugh, I hate it.
Yeah. Um at some of these press conferences, because obviously they were having like daily press conferences with the police and stuff, the press would call out the leaders and say, hey, like, why didn't you just grab David while he was out and about instead of
Yeah.
putting all these women and children and innocent people in harm's way?
Yeah, no kidding.
um they kept saying women and children, and I was like, yeah, but like there was innocent men in there too, so let's just say innocent people in harm's way. And they said, well, David doesn't leave the compound. But the press determined that was a lie. Many people in
Mhm.
the area said that he often went for jogs into the store. He even had like a local job at like a community college. So he was out and about all the time. So this was not about just capturing David.
Yeah.
Um so why didn't they do that?
'Cause
One
they're
FBI agent
dumb.
said that, yeah. One FBI agent said that they were trying to make a big publicity stunt to show the world what they could do to squash that anarchy movement.
Mhm.
Um, so I think again, like they were trying to squash this movement and saying like, "Hey, look what we can and will do to you if you try and take up arms against us."
Yeah.
Uh, so a cult member said that in his interview now, and it was interesting to hear them interviewed now. Some of them were still very much bitter about the situation, which I don't blame them. Like a shit ton of people died.
Yeah.
Um, some of them still very much believe in what David had to say, and some of them blame both sides. So it was interesting to see. But uh, a cult member said they knew they were going to die. There was no giving up. They were going to die in there.
Hmm.
So, like I said, at this point, the FBI came involved, and they're like, we're going to take over because ATF royally fucked this up.
Yeah.
So they were trying to negotiate with David, but I think at this point it was just like too far gone. David wasn't having it. They said, well, can you at least just let the children out? And he said no. And they're like, well, why? They're innocent. Just let the innocent children go. And he said it's none of their business why he won't let
Wow.
them. They tried to talk to other members of the cult to send the children out, and they said they couldn't send the children out because David said no.
What a dick.
Um, David finally agreed to send the children out 2 by 2 if they would read a specific scripture over the radio. So they did that, and he did release 6 children. One interviewed FBI profiler said that everyone has something that was more important to them than following David, and they just had to figure out what it was. Unfortunately, they never did, but that was kind of their mindset going into this. One surviving cult member said that she was ready to die for what she believed, but she wasn't sure she was ready to have her kids do that. She said she knew they could make it in this world even if she wasn't there, and she had to give them a chance. So she released her children as some of those hostage releases. Once the children had left, they were able to speak to their children on the phone from the emergency shelter that they put in place for these kids. One lady in the compound wanted to leave too and asked David if she could go, and he said no because he was only going to let the children out.
Mm-hmm.
So she let her children go, like I said. The lady that wanted to leave and he said no, she decided to let her child go instead.
Okay, good.
Um, this is so sad because the child is still alive and they do interview her in this documentary. And the child said that her mom gave her a necklace and a note for the child's sister. And I'm not sure why her sister wasn't in the cult, but she was.
Hmm.
But once free, her sister came to get her and hugged her. And the lady in the interview said that she remembered that was the first time she had felt safe since they entered the cult.
Oh.
I know. And all or most of the children were taken to a special emergency shelter where they had a team of like specialists evaluating them. This is just a testament of like how fucked up they were. One kid said, "You like shooting us in the head, why don't I shoot you in the head?"
Oh.
He couldn't have been more than 10. Like, they showed the video
Oh,
of it, and he had, like, this little high-pitched, kid voice saying that.
I hate that.
Yeah. They would sing songs together, the kids, with lyrics like, "We've gotta hold up the bloodstained banner. We gotta hold it until we die."
Lovely. Love
And I'm
some good
talking,
old
like, little
brainwash.
yeah, and I'm talking, like, little 4-year-olds were singing this.
Oh, it's even creepier.
Yeah. Um, the kids would draw the compound on fire, and the psychologist would ask what the red stuff coming from the building was, and they always say, "That's none of your business, you'll find out."
Oh, gross.
Which is insane because that's how this ends, is with the building on fire.
Yeah.
Um, so during this siege back to the compound, they had, again, being a doomsday cult, they had stockpiled food and water. And so during the siege, they had to ration. They rationed their food, they rationed their water because obviously nobody was going in or coming out to get stuff.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and so an FBI negotiator asked David what they could do to get this resolved today. And this was early on in the standoff. And David said, "Well, you can tell those agents that as an American citizen, someone stepped on my property and there's going to be some butt whipped over this, either their butt or my butt."
Oh,
So he clearly was not ready to end it no matter what.
no.
At this point, it was just revenge.
Yeah, no, he just wanted all the control, right?
Right. And he even said to the FBI negotiator, "Do you know what Koresh means?" Because that's the last name he picked.
Mhm.
He said it means death.
Oh, super.
So, yeah. So the FBI was trying to think of different ways to get to David, like psychologically. And so they requested that he make a video of the people inside so they could put a face to the name and learn their personalities. In the video, he showed a ton of his babies because obviously he had like 20 wives. So he had like a ton of babies that were his biologically. And they said you could tell these babies were scared of him. They were really robotic around him. And they just looked terrified. Now, in the video, they do look really scared and they don't look like they're a fan of him. However, they were going through something pretty major.
It only
So,
shows on like Google that he only has 3 children.
huh. Yeah, no, I think he has more than that. I mean, he had at least 5 he was shown in this video alone.
Hmm. Interesting. Maybe they're the only ones with names.
Maybe. Are the only ones that survived.
Maybe.
But they really do look scared. But like I said, they had just been through a ton. Like the ATF was literally shooting through their building. They had like glass exploding on their faces. One child, remember having her mom jump over her to like shield her body from bullets. Like, so these kids were traumatized. But the FBI profiler said they looked scared of him specifically. So who knows? I mean, he was very abusive. So on the video, each person that was interviewed within the cult asked if they were there against their will, and they all said no. The FBI responded with a video introducing themselves and their families, like trying to appeal to the fatherly nature in David, trying to get him to like, find some common ground with them. So at this point, they made an agreement together that David could record a message about his 7 seals theology or whatever. They would play it in its entirety over the radio, and then David promised to peacefully surrender at the end of it. They played the message. They brought in the buses to like ship these people, and no one came out. David even said, or a cult member in there even said that David told them to pack their bags and get ready to leave, but no one came out. So the FBI was like, "Yo, dude, what's up?" And David said, "Well, you know what? God actually told me to wait, so I'm just going to hold off from now." So he lied. Like, he told them, "Yes, if you play this on the radio, I will surrender and come out." And then he's like, never mind.
Oh, shithead.
Yeah. So this really pissed off the FBI command, and it escalated things. So the FBI brought in tanks, like legit tanks. They also cut the power to the compound, which, like I said before, they didn't have electricity, but at some point they did get some electricity, and they cut the power to it. And this is what one of the brainwashed guys that's still brainwashed to this day said, that didn't make sense to them. Like, why is the FBI doing this? We were talking, we were negotiating. Why are you doing this? Well, and they knew what David had done. But they believed that God was telling David to wait, and so that was their justification. So, so the FBI started having struggles between themselves. There was arguments between the negotiation team and the hostage rescue team. So the negotiation team, they work more on a psychological basis. The hostage rescue teams are like the tactical teams. So they, run in guns a-blazing. So there was some argument between the two. The negotiation team wanted to continue, and the hostage rescue team was like, nah, man, we want to barge him. Also at night, the FBI was waging psychological warfare by shining helicopter lights on the compound all night, blasting loudspeaker messages, playing loud music, just anything to kind of keep them awake and on edge.
Was this not bothering any of their neighbors?
Well, they were in a secluded area.
Oh,
So,
okay.
like, they did have some neighbors, but I think they were far away. But, I mean, at this point, everybody knew what was going on. So finally, after 30-some days, David's lawyer was allowed to go in and talk to David. And when he came out, he said that David said he would surrender after he wrote his interpretation of the 7 seals. Obviously, based on his track record, the government did not believe him. They're like, okay. So 51 days had passed. No one had come out in a month. And so they decided to use a non-lethal gas to force them out. So that morning, it was extremely windy. It was like 30 to 40 miles per hour winds. And a tank with a long arm started to head towards the building. On the loudspeaker, they said, "This is not an assault. Do not fire your weapons. If you fire, fire will be returned. David, it is time to submit and surrender to authorities. The gas will temporarily render the building uninhabitable." So they literally took this tank and just like ran it into the building and then threw in gas canisters.
Assholes.
In the cult, someone was running up and down the halls telling people to get their gas masks, but there weren't gas masks for children, so the parents were like wetting down towels and putting them over their face.
Oh, lovely.
Hour after hour, they were adding gas, and nobody would come out. Suddenly, the compound was engulfed in flames, and the wind spread it rapidly. No one knew how it started. The government thought David set it off, and so did some of his followers. The FBI does have infrared cameras view from the top from one of the helicopters showing 3 fires starting simultaneously in different areas of the building. They also have audio of David and others talking about setting the fire from bugs that they had placed in the compound. And David told the mothers to take their children to the vault. So I think that's pretty damning evidence that David started the fires, and I can see him doing that. And the kids knew that that's how the plan was to end it. So I tend to believe that David was the one to start the fire. However, with the way the government handled this, I can also see them covering it up and saying that. So at this point, the staircase collapsed, so people were stuck on the 2nd floor and couldn't get out. People started to jump out of the building, and suddenly there was a huge explosion on the 2nd floor. In the end, so like I said, in my opinion, I do think David started the fire. So he knew all of his people were going to either burn or suffocate to death. But this coward took the easy way out and had his second in command shoot him in the head.
Oh, it's literally like Jim Jones.
Yep. So like I said, he was found with a bullet hole right through his forehead, presumably shot by his right-hand man, Stephen, who was also there dead. They said many people were found in there with gunshot wounds, some self-inflicted. So instead of burning to death, they shot themselves.
Lovely.
Not only 9 people survived this, and 78 people died.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so add on to that the 4 ATF agents that had died that first day, and we've got about 80 deaths in this standoff.
See, and I always thought that it was just like everybody died because it was like a mass shooting. I didn't know that there was a fire.
Yep. There obviously there was a ton of congressional hearings and investigations after this. So many conspiracy theories came out of this because the Department of Justice put a gag order on the FBI agents and the ATF agents, so they couldn't say anything.
Of
So these
course they
conspiracy
did.
theories like ran wild, right?
Yeah.
One was even that Bill Clinton was directly involved because he was the president at the time. Another one was that Janet Reno was calling shot for shot what was happening. Like, they had nothing to do with it, but it definitely further built mistrust in the government. And this is crazy. I didn't know this. But Timothy McVeigh was there at these congressional hearings, and this mistrust was built within him, and he started to get more and more angry about it, which led to the Oklahoma City bombings. So without this case, the Oklahoma City bombings probably would have never happened.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's this case. I want to say it was in the 90s. Timothy McVeigh like bombed this building in Oklahoma City, obviously, and killed like just a ton of people.
Yeah.
So this is the last point I have, and it's kind of annoys me. People from all over came to help rebuild the church out there. And there's this guy that owns a Waco museum, and he's like so for the Branch Davidians and like so against the government, which like, yeah, the government definitely mishandled this, but that was a cult. David was an evil human. Like, don't put him on a pedestal.
No.
But there are still Branch Davidians to this day. That church is still operating. They still believe he was righteous and the Son of God and will be coming back with God's army. But my last sentence is in here. But I'm sorry, I don't recall Jesus leading 78 people to their death.
What a dumbass. I hate people.
Right? And that is my Waco story.
Jeez. That's crazy.
Insane, right?
Yeah, like I didn't even know everything about it. Like I said, I just thought it was like a massive shootout, but I didn't
Yep.
realize it lasted so long, and I didn't realize that there was like a tank involved.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit.
Well, and like all that could have been avoided if they would have just grabbed David out in town.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what dumbasses. Like, I hate that like they don't care about children being involved. Like, children are innocent.
Right. Yeah.
F off.
But like also on the flip side, like their parents didn't care about them being involved either. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just makes me mad.
Yeah.
Cults make me mad.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, yeah, because they don't give the children any choice. It's just like, oh yeah, you're here because I'm here, so
Right,
deal with
exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Okay. So, very cool story. Space is just gonna be you this episode. My story is not that long.
That's okay. I've been doing some really short ones, so this one made up for it.
Perfect. All right. So, like I said, I'm gonna be talking about the Black Dahlia. I didn't even mention it in any of my notes, but she was found near the Cecil Hotel, which was the part of the Eliza Lamb story.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't even mention it in the story. I didn't even like see it anywhere, so that's funny.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I used for my sources all that's interesting, obviously.
Obviously.
And then I used mental floss as well.
Ooh, I like mental floss because I
Me
like their
too.
name. It makes me giggle.
Yeah, and I find that their stuff is fascinating. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, like they do a lot of scientific behind stuff, so that's nice.
For sure.
So most people know of the murder of the Black Dahlia, or most like her name was Elizabeth Short.
Okay.
So it is still one of the oldest cold cases in LA history. And on January 15th, 1947, Short's body was found in Leimert Park. Is that how you say it? Leimert Park?
I have no idea. Sounds
L-E.
good.
It's Leimert. I'm going to go with Leimert.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Perfect. I am not from LA.
Me neither.
Never even been there.
Me neither.
Would definitely like to go one day, but who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
not.
Well, if you can't even pronounce their parks, gosh.
I know. I'm such an uncultured swine. A mother and her child were the ones that unfortunately found the body of Elizabeth Short.
Oh.
When the woman first came upon her body, she believed it was a mannequin due to the positioning of the body.
Yeah, it's never a mannequin, people.
No. Although it was once. I think there's like an article that just came out that like somebody found someone's body and they thought it was a real person and it ended up being a mannequin.
Oh, I think I remember that. Was it like a blow-up doll or something that was, like, lit
Yeah.
on fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's rarely a mannequin, people.
Get your facts straight, Ashley. Short had been sliced in two right at the waist and she had been drained of all of her blood.
Oh.
Her intestines had been removed from her body and placed underneath her buttocks. Oh yeah, sorry, like trigger warnings, I guess, or
Yeah, this is real
content
graphic.
warning.
It's not a nice, sweet case. It's an
No,
awful, horrible case.
horrible. Sorry, everyone, I forgot to tell you. Pieces of her flesh had been cut off of her, and her stomach was full of feces.
Oh, God.
Which apparently led some people to believe that she was forced to eat her own flesh before she was being murdered. Like,
How
I
does
don't.
flesh turn into feces?
Oh, like she could have. It could have formed. It's still food. I mean, you get feces from
Oh,
food.
but you don't have feces in your stomach.
No, I don't know, but apparently it was.
Either way, gross.
Yeah, or I don't know. That's just what it said. I was like, I'm confused by this whole sentence, so you can all be confused with me.
Okay.
She also had the famous Glasgow smile. So along each side of her face, to the corners of her mouth, she was sliced.
Gosh.
Which is just so think the Joker.
Right.
Her body had been wiped clean, and therefore it was concluded that she was killed elsewhere before being left at the park. Due to the extent of her mutilation and nothing identifying on her person, the LAPD got in touch with the FBI and requested that they search their fingerprint database to determine if she was in it or not.
Oh, gosh.
And in fact, she was in their system because she had applied for a job as a clerk at the U.S. Army's Camp Cook in California back in 1943. And 7 months after applying for that job, she was arrested for underage drinking, and so she
Oh,
had even more fingerprints in the database, and she had a mugshot.
gotcha. Okay.
The FBI then provided her mugshot to the press, and this part is horrible.
Okay.
I hate
I'm
this.
ready.
It's not like graphic horrible, it's just like human nature horrible.
Oh, okay.
Um, Short's mother, Phoebe Short, didn't even know about her daughter's murder.
I remember this.
Yeah, so she didn't know about her daughter's murder until reporters phoned her pretending that her daughter won a beauty contest and they were trying to get as much information about Elizabeth as they could from her mother before revealing the true nature of their phone call, which was that her daughter was dead and like brutally murdered.
Do you have the names of those assholes? We need to blast them. I mean, they're probably dead by now.
They're probably dead. I think it was,
Assholes.
yeah, they were just at like an LA newspaper, I believe. They
Okay.
didn't mention any names, but just like, what kind of shitty person do you have to be
And I
to,
mean, like, what would even give you like think that idea and be like, yeah, that's a good one. Let's do that.
yeah, like, let's just get as much as we can out of this woman before telling her how brutally murdered her daughter was. Like,
Yeah, and it's not even. I mean, okay, obviously having your child be die is awful. Let alone murdered. Let alone brutally murdered.
yeah, like absolutely mutilated. And the fact that like
Yeah.
the cops didn't even call and tell her mother that she was found dead,
Yeah. What was
like,
up with that?
I have no idea. That just like blows my mind, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
cheapers Murphy.
Especially since they had already released the mugshot, right? You said.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen either of her, like, have you seen her mugshot or her autopsy photo?
I think I've seen her autopsy photo, but I don't think I've seen her mugshot. Let me look it up.
Yeah.
Elizabeth
Short.
Short. Oh, well, I've seen like her regular. Oh, yeah. Okay. Mugshot photo.
Yeah. And then like
Oh
even
God. Oh God.
yeah. Did you see her autopsy photo?
Yeah. They have a picture of like a really pretty photo of her.
Yeah.
Half of it, and then the other half is her autopsy photo.
Yeah. And
Oh my God.
like look up her autopsy photo. It's obviously horrible, but like it's fascinating. Like I'd never seen it before. So it was
Autopsy.
crazy. And it's weird because they posted a photo of when she was found. So she was
Yeah.
covered with a blanket, but you don't like her face doesn't look as mutilated as it actually is. Like her face looks normal in that photo.
So I found a photo. This is really graphic. I'm surprised this is online. Holy
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah.
It's half of her body, the top half. You can
Is
see her
it?
organs. Yeah, you can see her organs sticking out of the bottom and her face
What?
all sliced up.
How did
Yeah.
you find that?
I just looked up Elizabeth Short autopsy photo and hit images. There's a bunch of them. There's like images of her, like where they found her, like legit with her vagina out and legs and body. I can't
Oh
believe they have this
my
online.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Holy shit.
All right, so my thing is nobody Google that.
Nobody Google that. Holy
It's
shit.
awful.
I only saw like the photo of her covered in the blanket.
Mhm.
How do they have these on here?
I don't know.
This is terrible.
Yeah, nobody look it up. Don't. Just don't look it up.
Holy shit. But like in the photo with her covered in the blanket, you don't see her face mutilated. Like it's so wild to me.
I wonder if it's because it's further. The photo's kind of further away, so maybe you just can't see. And it's like an old timey photo, you know.
This is insane.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, nobody look this up. This is horrible.
Mhm. I can't believe they have photos. I mean, I guess I can, because there's like so much crap on the internet. But like, I can't believe that they released those photos.
Like literal photo of them like zoomed in on her vagina.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
heinous. That's disgusting.
yeah.
Like I hate that they have shit like that about like for a person that was like brutally murdered. Like why does that need to be?
It's so disrespectful to her.
It is.
Yeah.
Like why does that need to be online?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's heinous.
Yeah, it
Holy
was pretty awful. I didn't like that at all.
no. And like I didn't even expect to find those types of photos.
Yeah, look what you did. This is your fault. You told me to look it up.
Well, not that one. Those weren't the ones I was expecting you to see. Okay, so moving on. So horrifically, the media decided that they were going to spin some wild stories about Short after they learned about her history. Like her provocative history, I guess.
Hmm.
An example is of a police report which read, quote, "This victim knew at least 50 men at the time of her death, and at least 25 men had been seen with her in the 60 days preceding her death. She was
Oh,
known as a
heavens to
teaser of
Betsy.
men." Yes.
Heavens to Betsy. She had a social life.
Yeah, so apparently she was a tease. She was a nasty little tease.
Oh my gosh.
So essentially, to them, she was a sexual deviant, and it was more than likely her fault that she was brutally murdered.
That's so fucked.
Yeah. Like, it was 100% her fault.
Oh my god.
She had it coming because she was a tease. She was nicknamed the Black Dahlia because it was reported that she liked to wear a lot of sheer black clothing. And I think it also had to do with a movie that was out at the time.
Okay.
It was like something Dahlia. I can't remember, but it was also falsely spread that she was a prostitute, and like I said, she teased men. And she teased men because she was a lesbian. That's it.
Oh, yes, of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. So she was a lesbian too.
Okay.
She had moved to LA 6 months prior to her death because she was hoping to make it big in Hollywood. And unfortunately, there were no known acting gigs for Short, and she only became famous for her grisly murder.
Oh, poor thing.
Despite how famous her case was, authorities could not for the life of them solve it. However, on January 21st, a week after her mutilated corpse was found, the examiner received a call from a person that claimed to be Short's murderer, and to prove it, they were going to send a package of her belongings.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. This person followed through on their promise, and on January 24th, so 3 days later, the examiner received a package which included the following: Short's birth certificate, photos, business cards, and an address book with a name of Mark Hansen on the cover of it.
Hmm.
With cutouts of newspapers and magazine clippings was a letter that read, quote, "Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." The sender of these items was unfortunately too smart and doused everything in gasoline.
Oh, does that disintegrate fingerprints?
Yeah, so there's no viable fingerprints to analyze. On January 26th, so 2 days later, they received yet another letter which read, "Here it is, turning in Wednesday, January 29th, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police, Black Dahlia Avenger."
Oh.
This letter also included a location, and when the police waited at the appointed time and place, the writer of this letter never showed.
Of course not.
Of course not.
You're just fucking with them at this point.
Yeah, exactly. They're teasing them.
Yep.
Probably a lesbian.
Must be those
Must
crazy
be.
lesbians.
Oh my goodness. And I hope everybody knows that we're being very sarcastic, like, about
Yeah,
that.
about the lesbians.
Yeah. I just
The
think it's
sarcasm is thick
ridiculous.
with this one.
Very thick. It's more like I'm rolling my eyes repeatedly. This is the most stupid, fucked up thing I've heard.
Right.
um Yet another, like, after the dude never showed up, or the woman, I guess. Yet another cut and pasted letter showed up at the Examiner stating, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified." But
It was probably some man who thought he was entitled to her body and she said no and he lost his damn mind.
yeah, we will get into that later.
Oh, great.
Um, Yet again, all of these items were wiped down with gasoline, and so again, there was no viable evidence for analysis, which is smart for that time period. I would never have thought of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, especially because there's no internet to be like, hey,
Right. To be like, Google, how do
yeah,
I get rid of fingerprints?
exactly. Back in the 1940s, like, come on, probably
Yeah.
part of the mob.
Probably.
There is at one point 750 investigators on the case, and 150 potential suspects were interviewed as well. There was, oddly enough, and I can never understand this, there were 60 confessions to the murder. None were
Holy
legitimate.
crap.
Like,
They probably just wanted to be famous, have a moment fame.
that's what I'm thinking, and it's just so wild to me, though. It's like,
Yeah.
why would you confess to something so brutal?
Yeah, and it's not even like because you've seen other cases where they confess to something they didn't do because they were coerced by the
Yeah.
police. But like in this, it seems like they were just like coming forward in flocks.
Yeah, they're like all willy-nilly. They're like, I'm just gonna come in forward, and I just want the fame for this.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. Since the original offense, there have been over 500 confessions to the crime, and no one has been charged.
Wow. You said over, I'm sorry, you said over 500 confessions?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so back then there were 60, and then since then there's been over 500 confessions.
Wow.
Yeah. It's insane to me. Many assume that it was a date gone wrong,
Mhm.
or just that it was the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
However, over the years, there have been some theories that have emerged over this case. So there's one where this retired LAPD detective thought his father was the killer.
I feel like I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so I'll go into it. He noticed two photos among his deceased father's belongings that resembled Short. Upon viewing these photos, he began to investigate his deceased father, George Hodel. They the retired detective went through old newspaper articles, old interviews, and even obtained FBI files on the case, like for the
Oh,
Freedom of
wow.
Information.
Yeah.
Um, he even went as far as having a handwriting expert compare his father's handwriting to some of those sent in by the alleged killer, because along with the cut and pasted notes, he also handwrote letters as well
Oh, wow.
and sent them in. The results indicated a strong possibility that they were the same handwriting.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, however, they were never certain. Like they couldn't conclusively determine.
Can you imagine thinking that your dad did this?
No. That would be so horrible.
Oh my gosh. Was his dad a police officer?
No,
Oh, okay. I was gonna say because maybe that would be the reason why he'd have pictures of her, like if he was working the case or something, but
no.
never mind.
So Short's body had been cut in a similar fashion to a hemicorporectomy, which was a procedure being taught in the 1930s. And this dude's father was a doctor. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He also found receipts from his father regarding renovations done to their home. And one of the receipts dated a couple of days before Short's body was found for a large bag of concrete. And this bag of concrete was coincidentally, or not so coincidentally, the same size and brand as the bag of concrete that was found near Short's body.
So do they think that he was going to like bury her in concrete and then just never did?
No idea. I never saw anything else but the concrete.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Eventually, this guy wrote a book called The Black Dahlia Avenger, The True Story.
Mm-hmm.
And an LA columnist, like an LA Times columnist, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
decided to fact check the book. And while going over police files for the case, he discovered that this man's father was actually on the suspect list as a main suspect.
No.
Yeah. So he was so high on their list of suspects that his home was bugged in the 1950s.
What?
Yeah, and one notable occurrence occurred. It was at 8:25 p.m. Woman screamed, woman screamed again. In brackets, it should be noted the woman not heard before the scream. Later that day,
Wow.
yeah, isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
Yeah. Later that day, George Hodel was overheard telling someone, quote, realized there was nothing I could do. Put a pillow over her head and cover her with a blanket. Get a taxi. Expired 12:59. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out. I killed her. Or sorry, killed her.
Wow. So when you first started with the story, I thought it was just gonna be some like wackadoodle,
Yeah.
Like there's a guy that tried to say that his dad was maybe the Golden State Killer, or no, the Zodiac Killer. But
Okay.
like his theories have been like disproved like multiple times, but he still is just all about it. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought this was gonna be like, but no, this guy has like legit standing for this.
Yeah, like legitimate proof and evidence.
Wow.
Yeah. So Hodel continued by saying, supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Did
So
did he
not
kill her?
we don't know. So apparently, alleged, like supposedly, he killed the Black Dahlia, and he killed his secretary.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
But I feel like also like a killing that brutal and that awful, I feel like he would have killed again, right?
you would think, but who knows? It just
Yeah.
seems strangely coincidental.
Yeah, for sure.
Despite all of this evidence, it was never proved that Hodel was the killer, obviously.
Mhm.
And Hodel's son also linked his father to several other murders. Here we go.
Oh,
insinuating his father was a disturbed serial killer.
yeah.
In fact, in 2004, it was indicated by the head deputy that if George Hodel was still alive, they would have enough evidence to accuse him of the Black Dahlia murder.
Wow. Yeah, because I mean, if you're gonna kill someone and do that brutal of a thing to their body, that's not just like a one-time killer, like a passion kill or something like that.
Yeah, so apparently his son linked him to a bunch of other murders as well.
Wow.
And then we have a couple of more theories, a couple more theories,
Okay.
not a couple
I
of
don't know. I'm
more.
liking this. I'm liking this theory. I'm thinking this is the one.
This one's actually pretty decent too, the next one.
Oh gosh.
You
Okay.
had kind of touched on it earlier, so this is about Leslie Dillon, a man. A British author announced that she believed a man by the name of Leslie Dillon was the one who killed Short. He was actually briefly considered a main suspect before he was eventually let go by police. Allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly a lot because this was never like
Right.
proven.
Yeah.
So allegedly, Dillon was working as a bellhop and was asked to murder Short by a Mark Hansen. And if you remember, one of the address books that was delivered to the examiner
Oh.
was a Mark Hansen's address book.
Okay.
He was a local nightclub and movie theater owner.
Oh, I've heard this theory. I think this is the theory they used in the Black Dahlia movie.
Okay. I've never even seen the movie, so.
I think it's got like Josh Hartnett in it, maybe.
Oh,
It's
nice.
old, but
Yeah, it would be old. All right, cool. So Hansen was also another suspect, but he too was let go. Mark Hansen. Supposedly, Short had stayed with him for a few nights, and he was one of the last known people who reportedly spoke to her before her death.
mm.
It is also alleged that Hansen was smitten with Short, yet
Ah,
she rejected his advances.
okay.
It is then reported that Hansen then called up Leslie Dillon to carry out the hit on Short. Interestingly, Leslie Dillon had previously been a mortician's assistant, where he easily could have learned how to bleed a body dry.
Ah, okay.
And then I wrote, what the fuck? Through police records, this author learned that Leslie Dillon had known details about Short's case that had not yet been made public knowledge, such as Short had a rose tattooed on her thigh, which had been cut off of her and then shoved up her lady hole.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's horrible.
Yeah.
And again, despite all this evidence, Leslie Dillon was released, and it was believed to be largely in part to Hansen's ties with officers from the LAPD because, corruption.
Now I don't know. Those are both good stories.
I know. And then I have two more short ones.
Okay.
So one is that Short's case has been linked to the equally famous and unsolved crime, which I'm hoping to cover at some point next year, and that is the Cleveland Torso murders.
That sounds disgusting, and I look forward to it.
And by next year, I mean this year because this episode's probably being released in 2021. So,
Yes.
yeah.
It'll take us a few months to realize that we're in 2021.
Yeah. We're recording 5 episodes in December right now. So, all right. So, they think that it could also be linked to the Cleveland Torso murders, which was essentially between 1934 and 1938. A serial killer went around and murdered 12 victims and dismembering them. It was
Did he discover them like the Black Dahlia?
similar, yes.
Okay.
It was speculated they could be the same person given the nature of Short's death, the similarities to the Cleveland Torso murderer's MO, and the fact that the Cleveland Torso murderer had never been caught. And then we have one more, and it's linked to the lipstick murders.
Okay.
Another woman's body was discovered in LA a month after Short's, and the MO was very similar. A construction worker came across a naked body in the grass of Jeanne French or Jeanne French.
Okay. Jean. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
However, the difference was that in red lipstick on her stomach, it read, okay, so I got this in quotes, obviously, of what was said from an article I was looking at. And I
Mhm.
don't know if they starred out the letters because that's what was written on her body or if they just didn't want to swear on their article.
Oh, gotcha.
But it basically says, fuck you, and the U and the C and fuck are starred out.
Oh, okay.
It says, fuck you, BD, B period, D period. And then below that, the letters TEX. So tex.
Huh.
Um, and some people have speculated that the BD for fuck you, BD is fuck you, Black Dahlia.
Okay.
But obviously that was never confirmed.
Right. I
uh,
don't like that theory as much.
no. And like Short, this murder was never solved either. And even though we have these theories, the Black Dahlia case has never been solved.
I really like the first theory.
Yeah.
I think that has the most merit. I mean, the second theory has a lot of merit to it as well,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Something about the first one, my gut's just telling me that's it.
Isn't that crazy though?
I solved it, guys. Don't you worry.
Well, and that's the thing, right? They even said like we would have enough evidence on George Hodel to indict him if he was still alive.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What a good story.
Thanks. I liked yours
You're welcome.
too.
Thanks. If you would like more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Histories and Mysteries, or you can email us at historiesandmysteries515@gmail.com.
You can also rate and review us if you'd like.
Yay!
I think you can only do it on like Google Podcast and Apple.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Spotify doesn't have that feature, which sucks, but oh well. To each
Yeah.
their own. Anyways.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you 2 more episodes next week.
Bye, guys.